So what you're going to want to do if you want to work through the exercise, since it's a workshop, is put your name in the chat. Um, and we'll put you up on spotlight here with Cindy. She'll take over the meeting and sort of work you through. But this really does come from persuasion. The idea is, if you have a good idea, if you have something you're trying to bring to the world, somebody's got to say yes somewhere, or nothing's going to happen. And how do we do that it's very uncomfortable for a lot of people. There's all the sales world stuff and everything. And, I think Cindy's kind of created a different way of thinking about it and doing it. And, I'd leave it to you to explain, but, that's the idea of the workshop approach. We don't want to just learn things. We want to actually get some new skills and move forward in some areas. So it looks like the first, Bill, I think you were up first. So Cindy, you want to do a quick sort of introduction first, and then I'll bring Bill up?
I would love that. Sure. I was wondering, Larry, I have a couple of slides that might anchor us. Would it be okay for me to share?
Yeah, just grab the share and then unshare afterwards, and then we can keep this view recorded with the whole group.
Super. So I would just like 5 minutes to kind of introduce me and share a little bit about what I am going to talk about today. If I can get my view here. Everybody can see that. Don't worry, I'm not giving like a long presentation or anything, but I think it's good to just do a quick intro, and then the how-to model is what I'm going to anchor. We're going to talk about today, but it's an acronym, and I'm going to teach it all to you. And then I would like to take a lot of your rapid fire questions around a message that you are working on. So if you haven't brought a message or you haven't thought of one, I would suggest grabbing a sticky note right now and just thinking about a message, a persuasive message of some kind that you are working on or that you want to return to and finesse a little bit more. I know there's a lot of folks out there. I've seen some of your profiles, and I love that everyone's coming from all over: Florida, Cincinnati, Chicagoland, Philadelphia, DC. And we've got a couple people I noted. We've got the Batman of LED. I can't remember who that is, but that was a profile that stuck out to me. And somebody is an old dog with new tricks. And we've got some folks who are just real creative already. So welcome. I'm Cindy Skalicky. I'm the owner of On Point Communications. I'm originally from the same area as Larry, where he is, Chicagoland. I'm from a suburb of Chicago. So hello to all of you in my hometown. Hold it near and dear to my heart. Quick intro on me and who I am and what I'm about. These are the places that I've gone to school and where I have worked. I have a speech communications is my undergrad from St. Mary's College. And then a couple lines down, I have a graduate degree from the University of Georgia in rhetoric. And we're going to talk a little about that today. But rhetoric is, the science of persuasion. What are people actually doing in order to persuade? What tools? And we're going like really micro around what makes people change their mindset and feel and become persuaded to a point of view, a purchase of a product, an investment in your company, a donation for a nonprofit, anything. So that is what rhetoric is, essentially, the science of persuasion. It's part art, part science. I came from a couple big five or global agencies, Energy BBDO, advertising in Chicago, and then Spectrum Science is a PR firm. And this is just a smattering of a couple pictures of me. That one in the upper left is the class I taught at UGA. I was actually with them on the morning of September 11th, almost 20 years ago. And my family's on the upper right. The phrase I use is "I nailed it," which is that lower left photo. That's the feeling that you can achieve when you have mastered your message. And this one on the lower right is me with some of the folks I've coached at a rehearsal that I held with them. Quick overview of things you might be feeling when you are presenting your message. These are things I hear. My product or idea is too technical, too confusing. I cannot tell everything I need to in the time I've been given. I don't know how to organize the slides. And if you don't have slides, I don't know how to organize my thoughts, my storylines, my data points. I'm not good at virtual channels. I don't like in-person stuff. And you know what? I'm just going to wing it. I'm pretty good on my feet. So we're trying to avoid these kinds of facial expressions from your audience. Okay. The things that you're doing that are not landing produce facial expressions like this. And that is not what we are going for. So what happens is we take the theory of Aristotle, which looks like this. It is something I go super, super in depth on in my trainings. I don't have enough time to do that here, although I would be happy to take your questions in the workshop portion. But the nuts and bolts is, this is your map for persuasion perfection. If you can balance these three areas of speaker, audience, and message in your message, which I'm sure you're doing a lot of already and probably quite well, but this is kind of the next level way of thinking about it. Speaker is ethos, which is credibility. Audience is pathos, which is emotion, because we have to get people to care. We have to get them to know, like, and trust us and care about our cause or idea. It has to be relevant. Got to go at heart. And then the message is logos or logical flow. How is your message organized and structured? Where's your story and why is it there? Is it the right one? What kind of word choice? All those kinds of things fall into M for message. So last month, I was published at Forbes.com with an article about my model that I created and developed and teach, which has helped people win. I think I'm over $30 million in client wins so far after about 5 years or so. And that's just what I'm aware of. But it is a model that I developed after watching a lot of people just do subpar pitches and subpar presentations. So here's kind of the meat of the article. How to is an acronym, and what you need to do with the acronym is think about it as a framework for your message. Now, it's important for you to know that this acronym was designed initially for pitches that are a little more on like the formal side of whether it's an investor pitch or a sales pitch. So you may have to massage it to fit your purpose, which is important to do. But here is the model. And the reason there's a stoplight here is because, if you're going to get up in front of a group and they don't know you, but you want to persuade them to your audience, you are a red light. You are a risk. They do not know you, like you, or trust you yet, more or less, right? And it is your job as the speaker, and I talk about this in the article, to move the audience members from red to yellow to green means go. Okay, so how do you do that? You follow the how-to model. The H stands for hook me. Hook me to your idea. And what these phrases are, if you had to look at your audience and imagine what they are thinking, these are the things they're telling you. They're asking you at the beginning before you open your mouth. They're asking you, hook me, get me interested. Okay. So that's H. O is orient me. That means like, who are you? What are you here to talk to me about? What is the problem that you might help me solve? So if you can get them to say, okay, now I'm oriented. I understand your sandbox that you're playing in. W is win me. Okay, you've hooked me. You've oriented me to your problem. Now win me over to your solution. Okay, so that's the how. The last two letters are T for tell me more. Tell me more. Now you've hooked me, oriented me, and you've won me over. Tell me more. Are you for real? What have you done? How have you grown your company? How have you sold to others? What have other people said? Where is your testimonials? And then the final O is offer me. And that means you have gotten them to the green light and they're like, offer me a way to get in, offer me a way to work with you, offer me a way to buy from you, invest in you, support you. So the acronym is right here and it's in the article. And it's kind of what I wanted to take your questions and help you maybe with some of your messaging that you might be working on right now. I have one slide. So this is not available for me to share, at Forbes.com, but this this whole acronym is the essence of the model that I teach, which is part of all my programming. But this is how it fits onto a story arc. Okay, so left side is the beginning of your pitch message, and it could be 5 minutes, 20 minutes, 2 minutes, doesn't matter. Okay, hook me, orient me, win me. This is Freytag's 5-point story arc that you may be familiar with from your literature classes in high school or college. But that's kind of how it's painted on top of the model. Okay, I know I'm going through a lot, but I'm almost done. Okay, so there's my group activity if we decide we would like to get to one. I think what I'd like to do is stop and see how people are feeling, responding, thinking, and just to start generating some conversation or answer some questions and see how.
Oh, hey, Christian, it's Jill Hickson. How are you?
I think somebody is not muted.
Well, I'm looking for James. Thank you for getting the ball rolling. I had great interviews with Tolly and James. And round 3 hopefully comes with your new captain, Maggie.
There we go. Thank you, Larry. Super. Okay, let me see here. What have I got in the chat? Just some names of folks. So maybe I will start with Bill. Bill, what are your thoughts?
Very interesting. I'm a little overwhelmed with a lot of things, so I don't feel very clear about executing. But
sure, which is understandable. But that's kind of so. What? Let's start here. Do you have a message you are working on right now?
I don't know. Interdisciplinary collaboration.
What does that mean?
It means working together in a group, in groups, to find collaborative, cooperative solutions.
Okay. So are you working, who are you, think for a minute, and everybody can do this. Think for a minute on opportunities you have to engage a person and to lead them to, are you trying to get people to sign up and purchase a program?
Yeah, like for a group, a group membership, or for joining our company. We have a couple companies that work with health and wellness and innovative natural products and services.
Okay. And so how do you feel your messaging is currently when you're trying to get folks to kind of come in and either join your team or get your get kind of inside your programs? Is that what?
Yeah, it to me, a lot of it's about community, and it's funny when I follow Larry, and I appreciate, and in some ways I'm doing something very similar, although I don't know the depth of his work, really just this level. But I work primarily with clinicians, mental health.
My husband's a clinician in mental health, so yeah, that resonates.
I think we've divided healthcare into all these different compartments, and what's kind of often left out is the patient.
Okay.
And so it seems like healthcare in general, if you're a patient, it often doesn't work real well. And my idea is to have clinicians have understandings of each other, meaning their work, and to be able to communicate with each other without all of the jargon and trappings, so that patients can be assisted.
Okay. So you provide a community where they can communicate with one another and get support and
insight and relationship.
Sure. And so what problem do you solve for them? And I would say everybody can ask yourself that question. What problem do you solve for your prospects? So without what you have, William or Bill, without you and your organization, what is the situation like for your prospects? What is broken?
they have to function alone without knowing what other people are doing in other fields, and to learn about just by reading rather than real relationship where specific questions can be asked.
So you accelerate things for them, it sounds like.
Yes.
Okay.
yes.
That might be a good word if you don't already use that in your
Yes.
messaging.
Yeah.
Bill, would you be okay if I open up an exercise that everyone can do that you can also do? And
Sure.
then we can see if other folks question. Do you have a specific burning question you want to ask me before I do that? Or
No.
okay. Well, stand by if you have one later and we can definitely return to that.
Okay.
I think it might help everyone if we do an exercise that that I do with my workshop folks, because you're right. I did throw a lot at everyone as we got started, and that's okay. This is called the invention intention exercise. And you might think, well, I don't have an invention. And I would say, I bet you do, because it's whatever you've developed to create for the world that is your superpower and that you are amazing at doing. So I call it the invention intention exercise because it rhymes and it's cute and they both start with I. But every one of us on this call has invented some new way of solving a problem. So when I work with a big group of people, I start out with this very simple exercise. And if there is a person with a dog barking, I'm going to ask you to mute.
I will mute. That's
Oh, super. Thank you. So what I would like you to do is grab your pen and paper or your Word doc or whatever you would like. And I want to give you a quick little story of how I came up with this. So my son, when he was in 5th grade, came home with this homework assignment, and he had to talk or do something on they were studying the Industrial Revolution. And I read through the paper and I was like, wow, I never thought I would get an exercise for my business from my kid's 5th grade homework assignment. But here's what the class had to do. On the left column, you'll see over here, what is the problem or need? And what was the invention that came about? Okay, so they were talking about basic inventions that we all think about from, the 19th century, the 20th century. So for some examples, and then I'm going to ask you to do this. My son wrote, it's difficult to travel in a short amount of time. So someone invented planes, trains, and automobiles. It's difficult to communicate over long distances. So someone invented the telephone. And this one's my favorite. It's difficult to know if a cop is chasing you. So someone invented the radar detector, right? So what is it difficult for your prospects to do without you? And what did you invent or create or establish to solve that problem? So I would say it is really difficult for founders and leaders of companies to clearly articulate what their offering is. So I created a program called Perfecting Your Pitch to teach them how to master their message. So what I want you to do is maybe drop this in the chat, okay? You can just focus mostly on the bolded parts. And I'm purposely making this really elementary and very simple, because what you can do with this answer is kind of what I just did with you, is put it into a sentence that can become part of like the elevator pitch style messaging that you always need when you're meeting new people, when you're in a room and you're networking. So what this helps you understand is how you can articulate the problem that you solve. Most people are so focused on the solution and what they do for everyone that doesn't land until we have oriented, understood the problem. So the 2 letters of the how-to model that we are getting at right here are the first O, orient, and the W, win. Okay, so it's difficult to do X. That tells me what universe you work in. Okay, that's the O for orient. And so I invented X is like part of the win part, because that's your solution. Does everybody understand what we're trying to do? And if you have a question, just raise your hand. think I can see everybody, but I'm going to put 3 minutes on the clock and mute myself. And then I would like you to drop your answers in the chat. It will really help me understand what you're doing or just what you've drafted. Ready? Go. I would invite you to put in the word for at the beginning. It's difficult to or for. So Bill, you might say it's difficult for mental health professionals to understand holistic needs of patients. So I invented interdisciplinary groups, and then you can slowly build on that by adding the word that after the word groups. Much better, Bill. That's good. Okay, we'll take a couple more minutes. I'm going to call on a couple of you. Nathan, it is difficult to write a book. So I changed the way it's done and I interviewed people for the content.
Cindy, can you stop the share and then we can capture the conversation?
Yes,
That makes it better for the
absolutely. For
for
those
the
watching.
replay. So I'm going to add
Yeah.
Nathan up in the spotlight there.
Gotcha.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Nathan, it's difficult to write a book. So I changed the way it's done and I interviewed people for the content. I think that is a good start. I'm looking at, I changed the way it's done. Can you expand a little on
Yeah,
what
sure.
that means?
Well, okay, two things. The traditional way that people write books is by hand, which is very long and very laborious. For 150 to 200 pages could take up to 250 hours of work. But what I learned as a ghostwriter is that if you want to help somebody write a book, number one, create a really solid outline. And once the outline is done, then get on the phone with them and interview them like a podcaster would do.
Mhm.
You interview the person for the content. It goes much, much faster. And there's a flow that happens when you interview somebody, which is much simpler and easier than trying to write it by hand.
For
Like
sure.
at the yeah,
Okay.
that's basic it. Yeah.
Do you, a couple thoughts on your descriptor that might help make
Sure.
it stronger? The word people is really general. So I'm wondering if you have a
Okay.
target market of who you help
Well,
write.
I would say the author.
Okay. Do you have like, are these usually like solopreneurs who are, it's their first book? What types of authors do you like to work with? Do you have that fizzled down at all?
Generally coaches and consultants.
Okay.
That's who I've worked with mostly. Yeah.
Drop that in the instead of people. And then as you use that
Sure.
as
Okay.
marketing, you can do that. And then do you like, what is like awesome sauce about the way you specifically do it, Nathan, as far as, like for, and as I got your answer, I was like, I know a lot of ghostwriters. I know a lot of people that interview for books. Like, what is your awesome angle? Do you have a certain process? Did you build?
There are a couple. Well, it depends. The outline is one thing, but a couple of things. If I was doing just a straight interview, One of the things I learned is to ask somebody, what is the number one, whatever it is, to do with their business? It's a really great way of getting information. But the other technique, which I use with this process, is whenever we come to the end of an interview, I say, we've covered an awful lot of ground with these questions, but I was wondering if there is something that you would like to address that we haven't addressed or that we haven't covered with these questions. And every time I do that, it just opens the floodgates, and I wind up with a truckload of really great information that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise.
That is brilliant, because my brother
Thank you.
works for, he's a sports writer for the Daily Herald in Chicago, and he says the same thing. He said the gem of interviewing with sports, but like he has gotten so many once in a lifetime interviews from sports greats asking that very exact question. So that's awesome.
Oh, that's cool.
I want to frame this for everyone who's also watching and listening to the replay. So Nathan, what you can do with the sentence that you're bettering, okay, is begin to imagine that as like the mustard seed of a phone call you might have with a coach or a consultant who is curious about your work. Okay, so if we looked back at that how-to model, what you would want to do to make it grow, like you've got the yeast here, but how do we turn it into bread? Well, you start thinking like, okay, I'm talking to coaches and consultants. So when I open my discussion, I need to make sure that they are in my mind and I have a story.
Yeah, there is something else.
Yes.
And I just got off a call with Matt here. One of the things that I do is to create an environment where everybody's relaxed. I like to create what I refer to as a fireside chat. And if I can create a really relaxed environment for myself but more for the person that I'm with, if I can do that, then everything works. It just works beautifully. So
raise your hand if you feel relaxed just listening to Nathan, because his voice is so awesome and his tone is relaxing. And so I think that just getting on a call with you automatically shows your, like, one of your superpowers that is just innate, and there's value in knowing that as well. So I love that. Thank you, Nathan. I want to get to some other folks if that's okay.
Sure.
But I think
Totally
that
fine.
you have a great
Thank you.
start. Yeah, you're welcome. Larry, are you going to cue me up with folks? You're muted.
Yeah, I'm just going to go in order.
Yeah.
So everybody make sure to keep muted if you're not up on the up on the stage here. Okay. There we go. All right.
Hey, Matt, unmute for me. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Cindy.
Yeah, good to meet you in person, sort of. Let's see. Did you drop yours over here on the side, Matt? Okay.
I put a couple in.
You
The
did,
first
yeah.
one, was.
Which one do you
Try-
want me to read?
You can do the first one.
Okay. It's difficult for men to deal with depression, anxiety, and other emotional health issues. So I started a small community for men to join and talk in a safe, non-judgmental environment, right? Super. That's perfect. Let me read the next one just to see. Last year, a team worked on the following. It is difficult to share care and concern with a loved one when unable to be close. So we invented an app to send a hug to your loved one. Ooh, so which one do you want to talk about? Those are two kind of different things.
I know. They're very different.
I mean, same universe, but.
Right. So let's talk about the hug app one. Why not?
Yeah, I love that. That is really cool. So a team worked on, it's hard to share, and especially with the pandemic, right? I mean, that had to be was that sort of the impetus for that, Matt?
Yes, that was. There are two 24/7 homeless youth shelters here in Columbus, Ohio.
Okay.
And the staff couldn't hug the kids anymore when they would come in off the streets to stay in overnight. They couldn't, had to stay distance, had the mask, shield on, taking remote temperatures, things like that. So they felt like they weren't doing their job. So this was born this app
Okay.
came out of it.
So can you see, if you imagine that how-to model, okay, can you see which part of this is the O and which is the W?
O and W or H and O?
O and W. And I'm going to talk about the H because I saw your question to me yesterday. But
Well,
one
the
of
win me, yeah. Okay, sorry. The win me part, that's talking about the solution and the benefits.
Right.
That's easy. The orient of the problem is, talking about the struggle and
Mhm.
the stress of people not feeling like that they're doing their job and they're letting the kids down and
Mhm.
that need love
Yeah.
and attention and affection.
Yep.
Mhm.
Exactly. So I want everyone on the call to know that when Matt and I were bantering yesterday on LinkedIn, he asked me this great question. He's like, Cindy, I read your article. What's the difference between the H and the O? So H is hook me. O is orient me. Okay. And those are kind of the first two things that we have to do. And I said, that is an awesome question. And I will answer it tomorrow. So I'm going to answer it for you now, Matt.
Okay.
But
Right
when I'm
down.
looking at your sentences, I'm imagining, again, like a situation in which you might be speaking to a new audience about your app, okay, and this
Mhm.
thing that you now provide, and how you might structure those 5 minutes. Let's say that you have 5 minutes to introduce this to an audience of, I don't know, nurses that you want to know about your app or something like that, right?
Mhm.
So the H for hook me is typically a very short part of your arc, okay? And the O is longer and is more explaining. So the hook might be a rhetorical question that you ask to hook people into your situation. Like, I want you to think in your minds about how many people you wanted to hug Christmas morning last year and couldn't. Or something that gets them to sit up and pay attention, right? Or I want you to think of the last person that you hugged and how it felt and how it changed your disposition and your day. So that's an example for you, Matt, of a hook. And then to get into orient, we're going to spend more time unpacking the H and describing for our audience what the problem is. The problem with not being able to hug people is all this emotional fallout that transpires inside of a person when they've had no physical contact, because not only do we all need physical touch, but these people are sad, depressed, they have all these other problems, and that is a really desirable but missing component. And then you move into your W, which is about winning. So for those of you listening and working on your own stuff, that first O of orient me, we are hitting at heart. Okay, we are hitting at the heart part of that rhetorical triangle that I explained at the beginning. Because if we do not get people to care about what we're talking about, they are going to grab their phones. They aren't going to stay with you long enough to get to the tell me more about traction. The tell me more in that arc that I showed you all, that's the data points and the nuts and bolts. That's the head part. Okay, so up the hill of that image I showed all of you, going up the hill, we're getting at heart, getting them to care with an emotional storyline of some kind, or even sometimes data can work there. But then coming down the hill toward the O for offer me, we're getting at head. So we have to balance head and heart. And that's how you do that, through that how-to model. Matt, did that help answer your question?
Yes, yeah. So the the H is very short. I get it. It's almost like introducing the O in a way, and then the
Yes.
O is just the details of the emotional pain or whatever it is you're trying to
They are
convey.
definitely linked, and that's a very important point. Sometimes the hook is, like I said, just the hook needs to start. If you're doing a slide deck, for example, it needs to start with your title slide being really interesting and somewhat informative and beautiful. Okay, so hopefully that is a good way for you to keep climbing around that arc, Matt.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. JD. Let me see what.
Let me unmute.
Yes, please. And let me see if I can
Studies have shown that you cannot be heard when you are on mute.
Okay, so you have here, it is difficult for busy professionals to extract value from their LinkedIn activities. Raise your hand if you agree with that. So I designed a proprietary system that will enable them to generate the type of conversations that lead to business or career wins. Okay. So my questions to you, JD, are tell me more about the value extraction part. What is the hump people aren't getting over, and where's the promised land, the land of Oz of LinkedIn activities?
Yeah, it's a blanket statement. Well, I think I come back at that with the next piece. I've gone through several of these pitch exercises.
Okay.
I give them too.
Okay.
And what the fallback is that a lot of folks want to talk about how cool they are,
Exactly.
and not bring in anything that has to do with an outcome or client pain. So truly the outcome of LinkedIn, as we all know, is to generate a business win, which is typically a transaction.
Yes, money.
Or a career win, which is a
Okay.
new or a better job.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the outcomes. That's the end game. Everything else is reverse engineered from there.
Mm-hmm.
So in essence, and I've sat with thousands of people side by side at the computer, I know their pain. I've had my finger on the pressure points, and it comes down to this kind of nebulous term of value, and value can be anything. It could be failure to make a connection. It could be failure to acculturate into LinkedIn society, or vision or view themselves in the online world. And a lot of what I do eases them through that, but that's not something that needs great detail on an exercise like this. It's value is kind of the overarching piece there. So, and I think people kind of get that by now, that if they're on LinkedIn 10 minutes, half hour, an hour a day, and nothing's moving the needle, they're not extracting value.
Okay. So tell me about your system. Is that a method?
Well, it's proprietary.
It's proprietary. It's secret.
Well, here's the thing about the LinkedIn space, and we all know this when we're here, and I've had conversations with Larry about this as well. I mean, everybody's kind of seeing the opportunity here, but few people are really acting on it. And I've been doing it a long time in my space, so I've had the benefit that a lot of folks haven't, and that I've been able to chronicle the social science around LinkedIn for 15 years. So I know what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
And the trend is that we're moving toward these spammy lead generation programs now, and we're bypassing the process of human relationship development.
Yes. Absolutely.
That don't play with me.
No, exactly.
That's not how I teach it. That's not how I prefer to define it. If you're going to make anything happen on LinkedIn, it has to be through hard work and discipline and effort. Period.
Well, yeah, it's so true. And actually, I have a deer in the headlights moments frequently during the day when I get invitations from people who are just blasting me with all the spammy, salesy kinds of conversations.
It's horrible. And somewhere along the line, people got it in their heads that was the way to do LinkedIn. It's pattern mimicking, basically.
Yeah, right.
And who would have thought that you could stand out and build a brand by doing things the right way, huh?
So tell me, JD, do you have any thoughts on this model, the how-to model, and fitting things into a structure for you? Is this helpful for you?
I like your model. I've been listening to your platform. I think you have a fantastic platform, and you're right out of the great Aristotelian philosophers. So, I mean, come on, rhetoric.
Yeah.
Rhetoric. Is there something? Show me something cooler to study than that.
Oh, wow. I love it.
So I'm on it. I listen to every word, and you present well. It's presenting this argument and supporting it with this statement, and that's, I think, what you're doing here. And you're basically getting people to develop the business case for themselves.
Right. And I think what I've just figured out is that, whereas you say, don't spam people through LinkedIn and be annoying and relationshipless. In my world, I say, don't talk at your audience, talk to them, involve them, be in relationship, and your ability to persuade is exponentially higher as a result of that. So thank you. Yes.
And thank you. And it'll also be exponentially easier for anybody here to really understand why their clients hire them.
Yes.
By now, we should know why we're brought in.
Right. Yes, that shouldn't be a secret. Exactly. JD, great to meet you. Thank you for your thoughts. Absolutely. Hello, Matt. Matt number 2, not in, priority order. Don't worry. Nice to meet you.
Likewise, Cindy. Thanks.
Yeah. Yours is up here. I'm reading the other Matts. Let me find yours. Matt Colette. How do you say your last name?
Kalish.
Kalish. Okay, glad I asked. Are you using the little microphone in your LinkedIn profile to tell everyone that?
I'm not. I don't have the app on my phone.
That's your homework. You need to go to everyone here, and I'm sure JD is nodding his head over there. You need to get into your LinkedIn profile and record that 10. Yeah, everybody gets a 10-second shot at your, recording a vocal thing, and it says like it's your pronunciation thing. But I use all 10 seconds of mine to talk to the people. And there's a video option too to do a 30-second, spot kind of. It's difficult to pay less for lighting. Oh yes, for lighting maintenance. So I provide a no-cost maintenance program. So when I read this, I'm thinking of, and I'm not your target, I would imagine, but it's difficult to pay less for lighting maintenance. Is that like, and like companies, warehouses, businesses, are we talking about, or home?
Oh, yeah. It's all commercial.
Commercial.
Yeah.
So I might ask you to chisel this by adding a 4 after the word difficult. It's difficult for blah, blah, blah to, and pay less is one option, but you could also say, save money on, okay, so that it's more of a reward that you are implying for them. So I provide a no-cost maintenance program. So that sounds like you work for free.
Which
I don't think you do.
No, that's definitely not the goal.
Okay, so talk to me about why you put no-cost maintenance program in the term there.
For the first set of years, let's say we do a 3-year program. For 3 years, the company won't pay $1 for lighting maintenance. That's why it's no cost to them.
And why is that?
Well,
what's the business model? Kind of tell me.
It's not technical, but it becomes technical. How we put the light together. We have confidence in our lights that over this set time, we know the number of lights. We can predict this. It's how they're built. I mean, that's the sum of it.
Okay.
Our lights are built better, so we can back it up with a lot more than just a warranty. We go into the labor side and say, our lights are good enough where we won't have to pay for labor, so you won't have to pay for labor. We'll put it in writing that you won't.
So when do you transact with your customers to actually earn money from them? When is that moment? When they need you again later, or what? Selling
LED fixtures in place of high pressure sodium, for example, with a car dealership, their pole lighting. It could be a hospital with their patient room and hallway lighting.
You're selling them the lights first, and then you're talking to me right now about how you the lighting maintenance is really low on their balance sheet. Am I following?
Okay, so an example of one of my clients is they spend $100,000 a year for a company to come in and change their light bulbs in the parking lot.
Okay.
With me, they'll spend $0, but they have to have my lights. So I'm not doing this for free. They buy my lights.
Okay.
And then for the next 5 years, instead of paying $100,000, for a company to come change light bulbs, they pay zero because
Okay.
they have our lights instead.
Okay. So hopefully our conversation has illuminated that I had a couple holes, but I think you know maybe where, and I know I'm not your target, but maybe you can fill in some of those holes with more specificity. I didn't get the beginning part. Like, I think you're showing me your secret sauce and how you're different and better than other companies, but I missed, the on-ramp a little bit. And if you can adapt that a little bit and tell a story, of course, all of us should be introducing some kind of storyline about a company which you just did, Matt, right? Like, let's talk about this company. Well, what I would ask you to do if you were developing a 5-minute sales presentation is tell the story about the company you just said had this problem, but stop short of the solution and explain the pain, right, before you get to the solution. So tell me about this company, and then I want to hear how painful it is before they hire someone like you. Are you following me a little there?
Yeah, I'm still on the same track with you.
Yeah, awesome. Okay. Any other questions? No. Larry's like, we're moving on. Hi, Holly. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Cindy. Very nice to meet you.
Wonderful. Let me see if I can find your words. I haven't read yours yet. I know you hopped in late. Holly Woods. Okay. It is difficult for entrepreneurs and change makers to define their purpose precisely enough to design their next product or service so they can gain personal fulfillment and create a sustainable business. So I created, there's my hinge, a purpose-driven incubator to help them create purpose, precision, which guides their product and business strategies. Okay. So I would like, as a second, like an exercise, like a next up exercise, I'd say cut the words in half. You need to reduce. There's a lot of repeated words. And I'm wondering, do you need to say both entrepreneurs and the word change makers? Or can you pick one?
Well, I work about half and half. Not, they don't consider, some change makers don't consider themselves entrepreneurs and vice versa.
So what you could do is sometimes we need two of these types of statements. So you could create two. I mean, not that you're always emailing these out to people, right? But it's just for your own purposes. So it's difficult for entrepreneurs to define their purpose. Maybe we could lose the word precisely.
That's the key, though.
Can we say clearly define? Okay.
It's more too precisely defined. It's actually much more than clear or generic. That's actually the goal.
Okay.
So precisely defined.
I think we could remove the value part of what they get out of this, because that, like, so they can gain personal fulfillment and create a sustainable business. I think if you pick that up, and that could be one of the next things that you say, just as far as my tiny little example is concerned, right? Like for the O for Orient, we're really just doing defining purpose as the problem accurately and precisely. So I created an incubator to help them. And I would like some adjectives around incubator, maybe step by step, A to Z, group, individual. I don't know what kind it is, but I'd be curious to know where you can sprinkle some of your Holly awesomeness. Like, how can I get a sense of your brilliance in these words somewhere? Would be something to think on.
So I'm curious here, because the distinction, the USP really is that it's a purpose-driven incubator, as opposed to a revenue-oriented or a go get external funding. There's lots of
there's lots of types of incubators. That's very true.
And that is actually the uniqueness about this.
Okay. Yeah, you could certainly play with that, or an incubator focused on. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. try those couple of changes, Holly, and see if you can keep maneuvering that. And it will lead you into some ideas, I think, for that storyline on the how-to model. If you're gonna, again, these are all building blocks that we're creating today for introductory calls or initial discovery calls with potential clients or people who want your, your 5-minute spiel, formal or informal. So was that helpful, Holly? I want to try to squeeze.
I kind of missed the last suggestion, but
okay.
I'll...
No. So I created I think you can leave in a purpose-driven incubator
to guide their product and business.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I think that's one I just took out.
I think we just took out half the words.
That last qualifier. Yeah. Okay,
exactly.
Good. Thank
All
you
right.
so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Great. So we got about 5 minutes or so. Anybody else want to kind of come up or have a comment? I have a question about application then. So this framework changes the way you function in what areas? Is this all spoken? Is it written? Is it introductory? Is it
like when to do this, right?
Yeah. What are the different applications?
Yeah, it's a great question. So as I mentioned at the beginning, this model is malleable. And so the one that you saw on the screen at the beginning is best and was designed for sort of more formal, later in the process, persuasive messaging. Like, this is not an introductory call, the little exercise that we just did together with the invention intention, those are helpful as building blocks. But the how-to model, like the name of the article is How to Win Big Deals, right? So we're at a place when you are going to use that model when it's time to present and it's time for really aiming to get at that next conversation. So I built that model for founders who are pitching investors, for sales directors who are out at companies, for consultants. I use that model. Now my language changes, right, Larry? Like, I'm not going to use super formal, highly, does that make sense? Like I might be more loose in my delivery of it if it's supposed to be casual instead of super formal, but the logical building blocks ought to be present at some level in most occasions that you are trying to express a message that you want someone to act on. So it's not, parts of it are just to describe your business, the HOW. Here's what I do. You want to get in with me on something? Let's talk about the traction and, the tell me more and the offer me. So you want to start with the how, right? And then ironically, the to is sort of an action word. And if you want to get people to action, then you need the whole model, I think, which I'm just realizing as you asked that. I think that works well. Does that help? Or is that
Yeah, it does. So if anybody here wants to go further in this exercise, what would the next step be with you?
Come talk to me. Let's, hopefully everybody, and if hopefully you'll link up with me at LinkedIn. I write every day. I do a ton of storytelling on LinkedIn, and I love to engage there. And if you're interested in getting more, we just start with a meet and greet, and I learn about what you're dealing with, what you're facing, what you would like to do. I've got an exercise called Reflect, Expect that anybody can do. And, I can find a link to that you can share afterwards or in the group. But what it makes you do is reflect on yourself and your previous skill set or your current skill set and from where you've come in terms of your presentation skills, and then set expectations, right? The expect part is, okay, I have these 2 really strong skills in presentation development, but I'm lacking in these. And my expectation in bettering this, these are my goals. After I work with you, Cindy, I want to really nail this one pitch, or I want like soup to nuts training. So I have a whole suite of products that I can help people with depending on where they are, but certainly lots to do from this model. And I do more than just this model, but this is the one from from our time
Got it.
today. Yeah.
Got it. Sounds good. So for tomorrow, at the community forum meeting, that's 9 o'clock Central Time, Rick Franzi's going to speak. Rick is in Southern California, and he built a $1 million plus network of CEO groups that he started, and he did it off one podcast. And he did it from a cold start because he really needed to find a way to make a living in a different format. And it's really hard to do that. So he's going to talk about how he did that tomorrow. And then on Friday at 11 o'clock, also Central Time, we're going to do what we call revenue connections. And that's really connecting into other centers of influence. And there's been some really significant meetings that have come out of that for everybody on that call. So that's tomorrow. Friday. And then the other one, I forgot, Thursday after the forums, that would be from 10 to 11 Central Time. We're going to do breakout networking. So we break out into small rooms on Zoom and just get to know each other. So you can just stay on the link or just come to that. So in the community platform section where it says events, that's where you can find the links, everybody to all that stuff. That is it. Thank you so much for coming. Cindy, thank you. It was great. It's really insightful, a lot of new ideas that can really be used. So I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you very much. Great.
You're welcome. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.